The key was in a small velvet-lined box at the bottom of his late mother's drawer, right beneath the letters she never sent and a photograph he didn't remember taking. It was heavy, too heavy for its size, and cold as if it had been waiting for him. Jonas hadn't seen the house since he was 8 years old. According to every registry map and even Google Earth, it didn't exist. No address, no lot number, not even a road. But he remembered it vividly. The crooked shutters, the spiral staircase with one step that always creaked, the strange silence in the attic. And most of all, the room with the mirror that never showed reflections quite right. The key had an engraving. For when you are ready, it read. The writing wasn't his mother's. He would have recognized the curve of her R's and the neat, nervous spacing. This was older, etched like it was made in another time, maybe for another world. 3 days later, he found himself standing on an overgrown path in the middle of Pinevale Forest, holding the key in his gloved hand. It was early October, but the cold had teeth. The leaves whispered things he couldn't quite catch, and the trees leaned in like eavesdropping elders. He shouldn't have been able to find it. The GPS refused to load past a certain point. But his feet knew. His bones knew. Like the forest had laid out an invisible track just for him. And then, there it was. The house stood like it had never moved. Like time had tried to forget it but failed. Ivy strangled the porch pillars. The roof sagged in protest of decades without care. But it was intact. Jonas stepped up to the door. The handle was brass. Looked familiar. He slid the key in. The lock turned with a sound that didn't belong in this world. Not a click but a breath, like the house exhaled. Inside, it smelled of forgotten books and autumn dirt. Dust floated in shafts of sickly yellow light that filtered through the stained glass. Everything was where he remembered it. The velvet armchair, the grandfather clock that never told the right time, the vase with dried lavender that hadn't crumbled. He walked slowly, as if afraid the house would vanish with sudden movement. His fingers brushed the banister. That creaking step still creaked. And then he heard it. A soft thud. Then another. Footsteps. He froze. Not his own. From the second floor. Jonas clenched his fists, jaw tightening. The logical part of his mind screamed that it was the house settling, a bird trapped in the attic, maybe an animal. But logic had always struggled here. He climbed. The hallway upstairs stretched longer than he remembered. The doors on either side, some slightly ajar, others shut tight, gave off a strange stillness like each one was listening. He reached the last door. The mirror room. His hand trembled on the knob. He pushed it open. Nothing had changed. The oval mirror still stood across from the window, its frame lined with symbols he never learned the meaning of. The air in the room was colder. Not in temperature, in feeling. Like the space between the seconds had thickened. He approached the mirror. His reflection stared back. Almost. Jonas narrowed his eyes. The reflection mimicked his posture, his clothing, even the shadows under his eyes. But the eyes were wrong. The reflection blinked slower. Its expression lingered half a second too long. Then, without moving his own lips, Jonas heard his voice. "You shouldn't have come back." He stumbled backward, heart thundering, but the reflection didn't move. It stood there, unmoving now, eyes fixed on him. Then slowly it raised one hand and pointed. Not at Jonas. Behind him. He turned. The hallway was gone. The door frame now opened into something else. An endless corridor of darkness lined with more mirrors. Hundreds of them. Each one flickering with moments he didn't remember living. He stepped back again, and the door slammed shut behind him. The mirror room was no longer just a room. It had become a threshold. And the house was awake. Jonas turned and pounded on the door, but it didn't budge. The wooden panels no longer felt like wood. They were warm, almost pulsing under his fists, like skin stretched over bone. The air tasted wrong, like burnt sage and copper. Behind him, the mirror continued to shimmer faintly, distorting ever so slightly as if something beneath its surface was trying to press through. Jonas backed away, his breath coming in quick, sharp bursts. "This isn't real," he whispered. "None of this is real." But the mirror pulsed in response. A whisper curled through the air like smoke. "It's more real than you." His blood chilled. He turned and faced the corridor that now existed where the hallway should have been. Mirrors lined each side, tall and ancient, some cracked, some fogged, others pristine. They didn't show his reflection anymore. It showed something else. In one, he saw himself as a child standing in this very house, smiling, but his eyes were completely black. In another, he stood over a woman's body. Blood soaked the floor, his hands red. He screamed and stepped back, but the mirror didn't change. It held the image like it was history, not fiction. "Stop this," he growled, pressing his palms against his eyes. When he opened them, he saw a new mirror. And this one showed someone else entirely. A girl. She was maybe 9, sitting in the same mirror room wearing a red raincoat. She stared into the mirror with wide, terrified eyes. Behind her, a dark figure loomed. No features, just an outline, tall and wrong. Jonas reached for the glass instinctively. It rippled under his fingers. And then, the girl turned her head and looked directly at him. He gasped. She shouldn't have seen him. He was a memory. An image. A ghost maybe. But she saw him. Her lips moved. He leaned closer. "Help me." The mirror fractured. Not cracked. It fractured reality itself. A burst of freezing air slammed into Jonas, and suddenly he was somewhere else. A field. Wide, gray, and wet with rain. The house stood in the distance, but it was burning. Windows glowed orange. Smoke poured into the sky like screaming spirits. He wasn't alone. Children stood around him. Dozens of them. Silent, soaked, staring at the fire. Not crying. Not speaking. He turned to a boy beside him. "What happened?" he asked. The boy didn't look away from the fire. His mouth opened and a voice like wind through dead leaves rasped. "They burned the memories." "What memories?" The boy finally turned his face toward Jonas. But it wasn't a boy's face anymore. It was his. The fire exploded with a deafening roar, and Jonas fell backward, plunging into a pool of darkness that swallowed the field, the house, and everything else. He landed hard. Back in the mirror room. The floor was cold now. The mirrors had all gone black. Only the original mirror remained, still standing, still pulsing. Jonas crawled toward it. "I want to leave," he said. "Let me go." The reflection showed him again. This time his eyes were bleeding. Thick black liquid ran down his cheeks like oil tears. And again the voice spoke. "Then give me what I gave you." Jonas shook his head. "I don't know what that means." But he did. The memories. Something about this house wasn't just supernatural. It was parasitic. Fed on memory. It hoarded pasts that people tried to forget. It didn't trap people. It trapped versions of people. Moments, possibilities, guilt. Jonas staggered to his feet. He moved through the door again, but now the corridor was shorter. Only one mirror now stood at the end. He approached. Inside he saw the attic. He had avoided it since childhood. Even when he'd lived here, the attic was off limits. Not by his mother's rules, by something deeper, older. He remembered once opening the door and hearing someone whisper his name from within. He touched the mirror's surface. It shattered not into glass but into a swirling void. And he stepped through. The attic smelled of wax and rot. Moonlight filtered through the cracked ceiling, illuminating the dust in spectral shapes. At the far end stood a chair, and in it, something sat. A figure, wrapped in cloth. No face visible, but something was humming. Jonas approached, heart hammering. "Who are you?" he demanded. The figure tilted its head. "Bowie." Deliberately. "The part of you buried." Jonas clenched his fists. "That doesn't make sense." "No," the figure replied softly. "But pain rarely does." It reached up and unwrapped its face. And Jonas saw himself again. But not just another reflection. This version of him had a deep scar from temple to chin. Eyes filled with sorrow. His mouth trembled like he hadn't spoken in years. "You left me here," the scarred Jonas said. "When you forgot. When you pretended it never happened. When you convinced yourself the house was a dream." Jonas shook his head violently. "No, I was a kid. I didn't." "You did." A sharp ringing filled the air. "You locked me away," the scarred self said, rising. "And now the house has kept the key." Jonas backed away. "What do you want?" His double approached step by step. "Nothing," he whispered. Then his expression changed. His eyes softened, not angry now, just tired. "Maybe. I want to be remembered." The attic stretched and breathed around them, walls groaning like lungs filled with dust. Jonas stared into the eyes of the scarred version of himself. Not a hallucination. Not a dream. a piece of him that had been cut away and left behind like a bad tooth. "You can't be me," Jonas whispered. The other Jonas tilted his head. "I'm what's left of you. The part you dropped the moment you chose to forget. You were 8. You heard the screams. You saw the mirror shatter." Jonas shook his head. "No. I don't." But he did. The attic flickered. The floorboards rippled beneath him, and for an instant the room dissolved. In its place was a memory. Not a vague dream, real, raw, vivid. Jonas stood in the attic again, 8 years old, hiding behind a stack of dusty trunks. Someone was in the room with him. A girl, the same one he'd seen in the mirror, stood near the window crying. She wore a red raincoat, too thin for the autumn chill. A woman stood beside her. Not his mother. This woman was dressed in black from head to toe. Her face was bone white, her eyes wide and gleaming with something not entirely human. She spoke in a language that slithered through the air like smoke. Jonas remembered covering his ears, trying not to cry. Then the mirror had glowed, and something came through. The memory ended. He was back in the attic, adult again, heart thundering. "What was that?" he gasped. The scarred Jonas was watching him, still calm. "The truth. The house keeps what you bury." Jonas turned away. "That wasn't me. I didn't invite it. I didn't open the mirror." "No," the scarred one said. "But you watched. And then you forgot. And that forgetting left doors open." He approached again, not threatening but inevitable. "If you want to leave, you need to remember everything. All of it. Even what hurts. Especially what hurts." Jonas looked back into the attic mirror. The surface shimmered with strange light. There were voices behind it, muffled and thick like underwater whispers. And in the center, the girl in the red coat. She stood inside the mirror, no longer crying, just staring. Waiting. Jonas reached toward her. "Who are you?" The attic pulsed. A surge of images flooded him. A rainy day. The scent of lavender. His mother standing at the bottom of the stairs, screaming. Blood trickling from the mirror's edges. The red raincoat soaking through. Silence. Years of silence. He gasped, stumbled, fell to his knees. "I knew her," he whispered. She was my cousin. Lila." The scarred version nodded. "You saw what happened to her. And you forced yourself to forget. You told yourself it was a nightmare." Jonas covered his mouth. "I watched that thing take her. I saw it reach through the glass and pull her inside. And I didn't stop it." "You were a child," the scarred one said. "But memory doesn't care." The mirror crackled with light. Lila raised her hand. He pointed at Jonas. And the attic split open. Not physically, but in meaning. The walls twisted into endless halls, revealing rooms Jonas had never entered. Rooms that pulsed with echoes. The house had grown. Or perhaps it had always been this big. One door stood ajar. Jonas stepped through. A bedroom. But not his. Feminine. Fragile. Dolls on the shelves. Posters of old animated shows. A tiny bookshelf with 3 stories missing. This was Lila's room. The air smelled faintly of her shampoo. The bedsheets hadn't been touched in years, yet there was no dust. Jonas stepped inside. A music box sat on the dresser. He turned the crank. A lullaby played. Sweet. Twisted in tone like it had been played too many times and slightly warped. As it played, he saw a shape move in the corner of his eye. He turned. Lila. She stood in the corner of the room, transparent, her face calm. Not a ghost. Something else. A memory made flesh. "I didn't mean to forget you," Jonas said, his voice breaking. "I thought if I buried it, it would go away." Lila smiled softly. "The house never forgets." A beat. "Can you help me get out?" he asked. She stepped closer. "You can't leave until you take all of yourself with you." "What does that mean?" She reached into the dresser and pulled out something. A mirror shard. When she handed it to him, it pulsed. Jonas gasped. Another flood of memory. A ritual performed in the basement. His mother weeping over ancient symbols. A man in a mask chanting in a language older than time. And Jonas standing at the edge of it all, eyes blank, watching the mirror glow. "Your family didn't just live in the house," Lila said. "They served it." Jonas felt like the floor had been pulled out from under him. "My mother." She tried to stop it. "That's why she left. Why she took you away." Jonas looked down at the shard. "This is mine," he whispered. Lila nodded. "When you gather all the pieces, you'll understand." The mirror behind her shimmered. Another door opened. Jonas turned to go, but before he stepped through, Lila said softly, "The house isn't haunted, Jonas." He paused. The next door felt heavier. Not physically, but in presence. The kind of heaviness that presses against your skin before you even touch the handle. Jonas gripped the shard Lila had given him. It throbbed gently in his palm, warm and pulsing like a second heartbeat. The door creaked open into darkness. At first he could see nothing. Then the unmistakable scent of damp stone, old blood, and melted wax drifted into his nose. A staircase spiraled downward, its steps made of blackened wood. A single lantern flickered near the top as if left there just for him. It's remembering, and it's waiting for you to remember it back. He descended slowly. With each step, memories returned, sharp and uninvited. He remembered this place. The basement. The room no one was ever allowed to enter. The room that hummed. At the bottom, a vast stone chamber awaited. Arched walls, ancient and ribbed like the insides of some long-dead beast. Symbols carved into the brick glowed faintly with a dull red light. Jonas recognized the shapes now. They weren't just decorations. They were locks. Each one a seal. A memory bound. In the center of the room stood a circle drawn in what looked like ash and salt. At its core, an altar. And beside it, the second shard. He stepped toward it. The moment his foot crossed the edge of the circle, the temperature dropped. Whispers began. From nowhere. From everywhere. Blood of the key. Blood of the door. Jonas's breath fogged. He crouched slowly and picked up the shard. Cold and smooth, and immediately visions seared into his mind. His mother arguing with a hooded man. A ritual interrupted. Blood spilled not by sacrifice but by choice. A scream echoing through the woods. A small boy clutching a mirror shard and crying. Himself. He fell to his knees. "I didn't mean to be part of this," he whispered. "I didn't know. But your blood did," a voice answered, not from the shadows but from inside his skull. He looked up. The shadows along the walls had begun to form figures, human-shaped but twisted, limbs too long, faces covered in stretched porcelain masks. And all of them had eyes like mirrors, silver, liquid, merciless. They watched silently. Then one stepped forward. "You carry the memory," it said in a voice like crumbling stone. "You carry the guilt. You carry the key. I don't want it. You came," the figure said simply. "You opened the house. You woke what sleeps." Another figure stepped forward. "The house remembers your family. The offerings. The debts unpaid. You are not here by chance." Jonas clenched his fists. "Then what am I here to do?" "Pause. Finish what was started." Suddenly the ground trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. The symbols glowed brighter, the red shifting toward violet, then black. A cracking noise rang through the chamber. The far wall split open, revealing another passage, not built but grown like a wound in the house itself. Jonas took the shard and stepped through. He emerged into what should have been the dining room, except it had changed. Now it was filled with mirrors. Hundreds. Every inch of wall and ceiling covered in reflective surfaces. And each mirror contained a version of him. One where he had saved Lila. One where he had never come back. One where he never left the house in the first place. And in one, a version where he wasn't human at all. That one turned its head as he passed. "Don't trust her," it said. "She wants you to put it all back together." "Who?" "Lila." Jonas paused. "She's part of it now. Like me. Like you." "No," Jonas said. "She's trying to help." "Is she?" The voice was almost pitying. "Or is she trying to be remembered fully so she can return?" Jonas backed away. The mirror cracked. He turned and ran through the room. At the far end, a door opened into a long corridor. Familiar. This one was from his childhood. The second-floor hallway with faded wallpaper and crooked light fixtures. He stopped before a door. His mother's room. He hesitated, then opened it. Inside, the scent of her perfume, the lace curtains, the bookshelves, the old rocking chair. And in the center, another mirror shard. This one sat on her pillow like a forbidden crown. He picked it up, and the room came alive. A memory crashed into him so violently he screamed. He was 12. His mother sat him on the bed, hands shaking. "If I don't come back," she whispered, "never go to the mirror. Not unless it calls you first. And even then, don't answer right away." "Why?" he asked. "Because it lies first. Always." She kissed his forehead. "I love you more than anything, Jonas." Then she left. And she never came back. Back in the present, Jonas collapsed onto the bed. He cried. For the girl in red. For the mother who disappeared. For the boy who watched and forgot. And for the man he had become. A stranger walking halls that shouldn't exist. 3 shards now glowed in his palm. 3 doors still waited in the house. The final voice came not from a mirror, not from the shadows, but from within him. "You've remembered enough to see the house," it said gently. Jonas stood in the hallway, the 3 mirror shards glowing faintly in his hand. Their warmth had begun to feel like part of him, like something alive under his skin. Somewhere deeper in the house, a rhythmic pulse throbbed. A heartbeat not his own, steady and cold. The house was alive. It always had been. And now it waited. He walked. The last hallway was one he didn't recognize. Long and flat, its wallpaper peeled into strips that hung like flayed skin. The lights buzzed and flickered. The shadows at the corners didn't retreat when he moved. They watched. A door at the end. Tall, cracked, heavy. Jonas reached for the handle, hesitated. Then he stepped through. He was in the old mirror room, the one that had been sealed off after Lila vanished. But now it was vast, cathedral-like. Stained glass windows wept red light onto the floor. The entire back wall was one single mirror 15 feet high. Not silver, but black, like obsidian or frozen water, its surface pulsing with a slow ripple as though something waited just behind it. Lila stood in the center. She turned when he entered. Her red coat was whole now. Her face calm. She looked older. The same age as him. Or perhaps ageless. "You brought them," she said softly. Jonas held up the shards. She nodded. "They belong to you. To us. To the house." "Tell me the truth," Jonas said. "What really happened here?" Lila looked at the mirror. "Our family made a pact," she said. "A long time ago. A way to ensure memory never died. They built this house on a crossing. A thin place. And they fed it what it needed." Jonas felt the weight of her words before he fully understood them. "They fed it us?" She didn't answer, which was an answer of its own. "We were born into a house that remembers everything," she said. "Every fear, every moment, every wound. They thought it would protect us. That by binding our souls to memory we'd live forever. But it took you," Jonas whispered. "It pulled you into the mirror." "I was the first," she said. "But not the last. You saw. You watched. You forgot. That's how it works. Forgetting is the offering. Each time someone forgets, the house takes more." Jonas shook his head. "Then why call me back?" Lila stepped closer. Her voice trembled now. "Because I want to be free. And you're the last key." The obsidian mirror shimmered behind her. Shapes moved in it, hundreds of them. Echoes. People. Versions of Jonas. Children. Death. Monsters. Memories made flesh watching. "You need to finish the reflection," Lila said. "Return the shards. Let the house see all of you." Jonas looked down at the pieces. They burned now. One for the attic. One for the basement. One for his mother's room. Each a memory he'd buried. "I'm afraid," he said. "I know," she said. "But fear is a kind of memory too. It keeps us from vanishing." Jonas stepped to the mirror. Its surface pulsed. He lifted the shards. As he brought them closer, the glass began to crack, but not shatter. Instead, it healed, the fractures sealing inward like wounds closing. The reflection grew clearer. He saw himself. But not just himself. He saw Lila beside him. His mother behind. The scarred version of himself at his shoulder. And behind them all, the shadow of the house, vast and breathing. The shards sank into the glass. The mirror went dark. And then, light. Blinding. Jonas screamed, but not in pain. In release. He felt everything flood back. Every forgotten moment, every hidden terror, every suppressed truth. He saw himself as a boy again, crying in the attic, reaching for Lila's hand but stopping short. He saw his mother, fleeing the house, bleeding, whispering a name under her breath that wasn't his. He saw the ritual, the pact, the brake. Then it was gone. He opened his eyes. The room was empty. No mirror. No light. No symbols. Just silence. And morning light. He stumbled out of the room and down the stairs. The house was normal. Smaller. The rot was gone. The windows were whole. Dust lingered, but the walls no longer whispered. At the front door he hesitated, then opened it. Outside the trees were gold and red with autumn. Birds chirped. The sky was blue. The house stood behind him, still and quiet. He walked away without looking back. Weeks passed. Jonas moved to a new city. Got an apartment. Bought plants he didn't forget to water. Went to work. But sometimes in mirrors he saw things that weren't quite his face. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, he heard the house sigh. One day he received a package. No return address. Inside, a small red coat neatly folded. And a note. The house remembers, but it doesn't have to hold. You freed us. Thank you. No signature. Just a mirror shard, smooth and dull, no longer glowing. Jonas stared into it, and for the first time in years saw only his own eyes.